Let's watch a CNN panel discussing the politics in the House, as we know the Republican majority is about as slim as can be, and also Speaker Mike Johnson is going to face troubles getting reelected to that position, so it's about as chaotic as you could expect from a Republican majority, so let's jump right in.
In the House, they don't have the Trump mandate that maybe Trump got from winning the popular vote and winning the Electoral College by a huge margin. So how are they going to govern? Are they going to be able to govern?
I think Republicans are going to be in a dead gridlock right now. The margin is so small for Johnson with those votes. And the hardliners have already said, with the debt ceiling, anything like that, that they're not willing to move on that. So I don't think that it's going to be a productive time for them. I think that the narrative is going to be driven by President-elect Trump. And that will be a huge indicator of how things are going to go.
I mean, to be frank, they probably won't get much done. It's the one failsafe that we have against Donald Trump enacting radical legislation with these majorities. I mean, his entire base isn't beholden to his a radical, elite first, bigoted brand of politics, and he kind of needs all of them to be if he wants to get that kind of stuff passed. We saw this stunt him after winning in 2016, where he had bigger congressional majorities than he's going to enjoy this term, and much less radical ambitions, might I add. And because he's not the most strategic and has pulled away from an already small majority in the House to add to his cabinet, he will now be walking on eggshells, especially in his first couple months, to get anything passed, even with two majorities, as he has to try and build a bridge between the elite tech bro wing that actually calls the shots in the party and the blue collar MAGA voter wing that wants to feel in control.
Speaker Johnson, if there is a Speaker Johnson, will have. I mean, he has this vote coming up for a speakership. Trump has now endorsed him, so things are looking up. But he can only lose 2 votes. There are so far, by our count, at least 4 hard holdouts so far. And if you're Speaker Johnson, right? Those 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people, everybody's going to know their names because they're going to wield basically all of the power on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, the question is, do they care more about the American people and getting stuff done for the American people, or do they care more about keeping their seats? Now, if they care more about keeping their seats, they'll get in line when Trump says, I need you to do this, and they'll do it. If they care about the American people, though, they will look to work across the aisle. They'll look to actually get stuff done. They'll look to do more than investigate and argue and search for porn on the floor, whatever it is that other folks were doing.
And because Republicans inherently only care about power, it is likely that they will just fall in line and follow the Trump pick and, Johnson will become the speaker. But there is that small sliver of hope that a couple of them could hold true to their campaign promises. Maybe they weren't just lying to the American people like most Republicans do, and will actually put workers first and all of this and care about the Americans and getting things done. And they can see how historically unproductive that this House was under Johnson. They could barely even pass spending bills. They definitely couldn't pass legislation that actually could have a chance of getting enacted into law. They were all just hyper-partisan bills they knew were dead on arrival. I mean, can anyone name a significant non-spending bill that came out of the House and was passed into law? I'll wait. But I will say, the long shot, if 5 Republicans defect, Hakeem Jeffries could win speaker, which at the bare minimum would be pretty funny. But whatever comes of this, I'm sure it'll be just as chaotic as the last time they had to choose a speaker for the House, as they want to prioritize everything but the American taxpayer.
There is only one way to get things done for the American people, and that's for all the Republicans to stick together. And we saw some division on this at the end of the year, and the Democrats were able to stick together for the most part. Republicans have to learn to stop fighting with each other and listen to their coach in this case, and their coach is Donald Trump, and he obviously wants to hit the ground running. I know Johnson wants to pass legislation between January 3rd, January 20th, so Trump can begin to sign things into law. None of this happens if you have a protracted leadership fight. So the best reason to elect Johnson, he's smart, he's done a good job under difficult circumstances, and more than anything, teamwork here helps Trump, and that's what Republican voters ask for.
The real reason Trump wants Johnson in this position is he's malleable, lacks a spine, and has no real values of his own. So he will quickly bend the knee to whatever Trump wants him to do. And I mean, he showed that through his entire speakership, where Trump wasn't even in office. I mean, Johnson winning this represents what we've seen so far since Trump won the election, a Congress controlled by the whim of Elon Musk, an unelected bureaucrat who is the richest man in the world, but also supposed to be the guy we're going to believe is to bring down the establishment and elites. Like, the acceleration of the control by the deep state of the control of the government by the deep state and elites, enabled by voters whose sole purpose was like destroying the deep state elites, is a phenomenon that needs to be studied. Like, the elites trick the exact people who hate them into voting for them en masse by convincing them that elite just means Democrat. Like, I'm just saying, like, imagine the outrage if Kamala Harris won and was going to appoint like Mark Zuckerberg and 12 other billionaires. You're not getting that same outrage from MAGA about Trump. Like, the way that would have never even happened, right? Like, this was the kind of things that were going around when Biden won, that he was going to put on all these deep state elites, and he didn't appoint any billionaire giants like Trump did with the likes of Vivek, Elon, and his 12 other billionaires. So the focus, of course, then shifted to race to distract from how wrong they were, even though, as I've already broken this down, Biden's cabinet, any pick that's ethnic is more qualified for the position they were appointed for than the person Trump appointed to that same position. I broke all of this down in a video. If you want to check it out, check it out. But that was just to distract from how wrong they were. That's why that was the argument, because they pretended that he was going to be the guy who appointed elites. And when he didn't, they're like, well, he just did DEI instead. Where now everything they were worried about is happening in their face, and it's nobody's fault but their own, but they're just going to cheer it on.